Шановні захисники, бути президентом.
That video appears to show Zelensky calling for Ukrainians to surrender, but it was generated by artificial intelligence. It's now possible to pretty much make anyone look like they're saying whatever you want. Chris Meserole is a fellow and director of research at the Brookings Institution. Chris, welcome to the program.
Welcome, thank you for having me.
So explain real quick what a deepfake is and who can make one.
Yeah, so a deepfake is kind of a digitally generated image or video or even text that looks and sounds exactly like the real thing. So, and that increasingly pretty much anyone can create these, whether it's a smartphone app or if you're a little bit more sophisticated, you can kind of use a server to do it on your own. But basically, we now have the ability, or anyone, more or less anyone with a bit of technical know-how, can now create an image or video or audio of anyone in the world that they have like any kind of prior digital video or audio of, saying anything they want them to say, which just creates a vast new kind of landscape and media environment that we now need to navigate, particularly in times of conflict.
Well, we saw that Zelensky video that was a fake. What are some other examples of how deepfakes have been used in conflict or can be used?
So there's a wide array of examples in which they can be used. One is obviously to create a deepfake of a national leader saying something in a time of crisis where you're trying to get that person to kind of discourage their own supporters, things like that. A few other examples that we're also worried about. One is that it really makes it easy for states to automate propaganda at scale. So a couple of years ago, China actually created a deepfake news anchor. And you can imagine during a conflict, having an auto-generated kind of news anchor just pumping out kind of misinformation about a conflict in real time around the world in foreign languages could create some real challenges. Another kind of more targeted example would be a lot of ways that we verify who we are and information for kind of highly sensitive applications or services involves audio, right? So if I need to do something with my bank, for example, I might call in and they would ask me to kind of who I was, et cetera. With deepfake audio, you could create, even if all you had was just this video that we're kind of filming now, you could take that, get my voice and my voice signature, and create like a digital replica of my voice and have it say whatever you want. And so you could call my bank or do something like that.
Well, don't give people ideas,
I know,
Chris.
this is terrible, I know. But the problem is this has already happened. Like there are cases where this has actually already happened. And in conflict, you can imagine a scenario where there's a commander out in the field, they get a call from their superior, sounds exactly like their superior, it turns out it wasn't. It was a deep fake that was generated by their opponent.
So are there ways to find out if they're real? Is there ways to authenticate them?
Well, so one of the challenges of deepfakes is that if there was a way that we could, anytime we come up with an algorithm to detect what's a deepfake versus what's a real audio or video file, that technology can then get brought into the next generation of deepfakes because it actually makes it improves the ability to detect them, actually improves the ability to generate them. So in the short term, you might be able to do that, but in the long term, that's not really going to be a solution to this problem.
It's a very powerful technology, and you write, I think you say this quote, democratic governments will almost certainly consider generating and distributing deepfake content. Because it's so useful, especially in conflicts. So what are the ethical concerns there that the United States might be generating this?
Right. To us, this is probably the most significant issue for democratic governments in particular. On the one hand, I don't think we want democratic governments to really kind of fight fire with fire, which is to say, I don't think we want democratic governments to create their own kind of deepfake, news anchor and propaganda kind of apparatus. On the other hand, there are probably going to be times where security officials, intelligence officials within democratic governments might want to use deepfakes to kind of influence the behavior of their opponent in certain ways. And an example would be, in a kind of counterterrorism operation or in an operation in Ukraine to counter Russia, for example, security officials probably aren't going to be too concerned about the integrity of the democratic kind of discourse, and if they feel like they can get an advantage by doing it, they almost certainly will. And I think that begs the question of, well, how can they do that safely? Because I don't think we want a scenario where anyone kind of in the U.S. government or any democratic government is just kind of creating these deepfake videos of high-profile kind of characters on the other side, at will. That could that's a recipe for chaos, and I don't think we want that.
So the suggestion that there's an international code of conduct for deepfakes, would that even work? I mean, why would you follow that?
So I think it's a great question. I would say that a code of conduct is kind of a voluntary commitment that different governments will make to establish best practices around how they're going to use these technologies. So it's not to say that these technologies would never be used. It's not to say that this code of conduct wouldn't be violated, but it establishes norms so that there's a bit of a cost, a reputational cost, or in some cases it could even be a legal cost to violating these norms and standards around how something like deepfakes could be used. It's kind of a pact among allies not to kind of get too carried away with how this technology might be used and implemented. And
not to add to the fears, but there's also the fear that authentic content gets dismissed as deepfakes as this proliferates, and democracies depend on people believing real information.
Exactly. So this is kind of the exact reason why we don't want democratic governments to go overboard with this technology, because once deepfakes are out there, if they're being really widely used, then let's say you have let's say it's a presidential campaign and there's a video of one of the campaigners or nominees, for example, saying something a little bit outrageous that might kind of get them in trouble. We actually, if that's a real video, we want people to trust that it's a real video, right? And we're heading towards a future where they could say, in theory, oh, that wasn't actually real. That was a deepfake. I didn't actually do that.
That's fake.
And I think that makes it very difficult for us to have a robust kind of discourse that has the integrity that we want it to have, that can produce the kind of democratic elections and processes that we want to have.
All right. Well, Chris, thank you very much for being on the program.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.